In the operating room, the doctor looked straight into my eyes, and I froze. The fluorescent lights above me hummed like distant bees. The air smelled of antiseptic and cold metal. My heart monitor kept time with a steady electronic pulse, counting down the seconds before they would put me under. He stepped closer, his surgical mask resting just below his chin, his gloved hands folded calmly at his waist. And in that moment, the world tilted because he looked exactly like my husband. My husband who died 8 years ago until his assistant called him by his last name. My name is Catherine Ann Harrison. I'm 58 years old and I was never afraid of dying, not after I buried Michael. Michael died in what they called a single vehicle accident on a wet November highway, the kind of accident that closes a casket and ends conversations, the kind that leaves you with paperwork instead of answers. 8 years later, I found myself lying on an operating table at Mercy General Medical Center, prepped for emergency surgery. Severe complications from a ruptured appendix, they said. I needed immediate intervention. I signed the consent forms with a hand that trembled more from memory than fear. The room was colder than I expected. They always are. Cold keeps the body stable, the nurse had explained. Cold also keeps you aware. I stared at the ceiling panels while a nurse adjusted my IV. My son Jacob had squeezed my hand before they wheeled me in. "Mom, you're going to be fine," he'd said, his voice steady, but his eyes worried. I'd smiled at him. I've survived worse. What I didn't say was that surviving Michael's death had felt worse than any surgery ever could. The door swung open with a soft mechanical sigh. 2 nurses entered first, speaking quietly to each other as they checked monitors and instruments. Then he walked in. The surgeon. Time didn't just slow. It fractured. He removed his cap for a moment to adjust it, and a strand of dark brown hair escaped near his temple. Michael used to run his hand through his hair the same way when he was concentrating. The surgeon stepped closer, reviewing something on a digital tablet. His profile came into full view. Same strong jawline, same slight curve to his nose, the same faint scar above his left eyebrow that only appeared when the light hit it right. My lungs forgot how to work. It wasn't just resemblance, it was recognition. He looked up. Our eyes met. Blue. Michael's eyes had been blue. Not gray, not green, but something clear and direct that seemed to see through pretense. I used to tell him they looked like winter sky. These eyes were winter sky. "Mrs. Harrison," he asked, his voice calm, professional. His voice wasn't Michael's. Slightly higher, more clipped, but something in the rhythm, the way he emphasized certain syllables, scraped against old memories. I tried to speak. My tongue felt glued to the roof of my mouth. "You're in good hands," he said gently. "We'll take excellent care of you." The anesthesiologist stepped beside me, adjusting the mask near my face. And then his assistant entered, flipping through the chart. "Dr. Reynolds," the assistant said. "The patient is prepped. We're ready when you are." Reynolds. The name landed like ice water poured directly into my veins. Michael's maiden name, before he took mine when we married, was Michael Reynolds. He had dropped it when we got married. Harrison became his identity for 32 years. But Reynolds had been the name on his old diplomas, the name engraved on his grandfather's pocket watch, the name he'd once joked he missed because it sounded more distinguished. "Dr. Reynolds," the assistant repeated. The surgeon didn't break eye contact with me. For half a second, just a fraction, something flickered across his face. Recognition? No. Impossible. Michael died 8 years ago. I stood beside his sealed casket. I held Jacob while he wept. I signed the death certificate. I watched them lower him into the ground. "Sir," the anesthesiologist said softly, "I'm going to start the anesthesia. Count backward from 10. My mind scrambled for oxygen. "Wait," I whispered. It barely made it past my lips. Dr. Reynolds stepped closer. So close. I could see the faint mark near his left temple where his cap pressed against his skin. Michael had a birthmark there, a small irregular patch of darker skin, barely noticeable unless you knew to look for it. My eyes locked onto the surgeon's temple, and there it was, a mark, not identical, maybe slightly lighter, but in the same place. My heart monitor began to spike erratically. 10, the anesthesiologist prompted. 9. I was nodding. I stared into his eyes. 8. His lips parted slightly. 7. He leaned closer, and I heard him whisper so faint I wasn't sure it was real. "I'm sorry for what I tried to say, but my mouth no longer obeyed me." 6. 5. The room blurred at the edges. The overhead lights smeared into white halos. 4. Dr. Reynolds' gaze never left mine. 3. If this was a hallucination, it was cruel. 2. Or maybe the world I'd accepted 8 years ago had never been real to begin with. 1. Darkness folded over me like a closing curtain, and the last thing I saw before everything went black was Michael's face staring back at me wearing another man's name. When I came back to the world, it arrived in fragments. First sound, a steady mechanical beep, air hissing softly through tubing, someone's shoes squeaking faintly against polished hospital floors. Then pain, a dull, heavy ache across my abdomen, like someone had reached inside me and rearranged everything. I tried to open my eyes, but everything felt weighted, my eyelids, my tongue, my thoughts. "Mrs. Harrison, can you hear me?" A woman's voice, not his. I forced my eyes open. The ceiling above me was different now, not the harsh white panels of the operating room, but softer lights filtered through pale green curtains. Recovery. "You're in post-op," the nurse said, leaning into my field of vision. "Your surgery went very well." Surgery. Operating room. His eyes. I tried to sit up too fast, and the world tilted violently. "Easy," the nurse said, pressing a firm but gentle hand to my shoulder. "You need to rest." "The doctor," I rasped. My throat felt scraped raw. "Where is he?" She glanced at the monitor, adjusting a setting. "The surgeon, Dr. Reynolds." The nurse looked at me carefully. "Dr. Reynolds completed the procedure and handed you off to recovery. He had another case scheduled." My pulse jumped. "He's still here in the hospital." "I'm not sure." "Surgeons rotate quickly. You're stable. That's what matters." Stable. Nothing about this felt stable. I swallowed hard. "I need to see him." The nurse gave me the kind of look medical professionals reserve for patients still drifting in anesthesia fog. Patient, kind, dismissive. "You can speak with him during follow-up. Right now, you need to breathe slowly and let your body adjust." She checked my IV, made a note on the chart, and stepped away. I closed my eyes, but not to sleep. I replayed it. The name Reynolds. The birthmark. The whisper. "I'm sorry." Sorry for what? Sorry for surviving? Or sorry for something much older? Footsteps approached, lighter this time. "Mom." I opened my eyes again. Jacob stood beside my bed, his sandy hair disheveled, his hands wrapped tightly around his phone like he needed something solid to hold on to. "You're awake," he breathed, relief washing over his face. Oh my God, you scared me. I tried to smile, but it felt crooked. Still here, I managed. He leaned down and kissed my forehead. The surgeon said everything went perfectly. They got everything. You're going to feel so much better now. The surgeon? I said carefully. What's his name? Jacob frowned slightly. Dr. Reynolds. Why? My heart thudded painfully. What did he look like? Mom, he let out a soft, incredulous laugh. You just came out of surgery. I insisted. What did he look like? He hesitated. Dark hair, he said slowly. Maybe early 50s. Very professional. Why? His eyes. Jacob blinked. His eyes. Blue. He studied my face now, really looking at me. I don't know, he said. Mom, what's going on? I swallowed. He looked exactly like your father. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Jacob's expression hardened. That's not funny. I'm not joking. Mom? His voice dropped, careful but firm. Anesthesia does weird things. People hallucinate. They dream vividly. You were under for almost 3 hours. He had Dad's birthmark. Jacob stiffened. What birthmark? On his left temple. The irregular patch. Jacob's gaze dropped instinctively. He had inherited a faint version of it himself. Michael used to joke that it was their family mark. That doesn't mean anything, he said quickly. Too quickly. And his name? What about it? Reynolds. Jacob stared at me. Dad's birth name? I finished. His lips parted, then pressed into a thin line. That's a common name, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? He didn't answer. Instead, he sat down in the chair beside my bed and rubbed his hands together, a nervous habit he'd had since childhood. You're tired, he said. You've been through something major. Let's not spiral. I need to see him, I said. Mom, I need to look at him without masks and lights and machines. I need to hear him speak without oxygen clouding my senses. Jacob leaned back, exhaling sharply. I'll ask, he said finally. Okay, I'll ask if he's available for a post-op consult before discharge. I closed my eyes, relief and dread mixing in equal measure. He whispered something, I added quietly. Jacob stiffened again. What? I'm sorry. For what? I don't know. Jacob stood abruptly. You need rest. But he didn't meet my eyes when he said it. Later that afternoon, a different doctor came in. A general surgeon I'd met briefly before my emergency procedure. He reviewed charts, discussed recovery protocols, praised the surgical precision of Dr. Reynolds. He's one of the best we have, he said. You were fortunate. Fortunate? When he left, I asked the nurse again about seeing Dr. Reynolds. He's no longer on site, the nurse replied. His schedule rotated out this morning. This morning, I pressed, right after my surgery. He completed his caseload. Caseload? Like I was just another file. That night, alone in the dim hospital room, I stared at the ceiling. 8 years ago, I'd stood in a funeral home staring at another ceiling while they told me not to open the casket. Too much trauma, they said. Best to remember him as he was. I had been numb then, grief-stricken, trusting. Now I wasn't numb. I was awake, and the more awake I became, the less certain I felt about what I'd buried. Just before midnight, my phone buzzed softly on the tray table. Unknown number. For a long moment, I simply watched it vibrate. Then I answered. Hello. Silence. Then a woman's voice, low, controlled. Stop looking for him. My blood ran cold. "If you want your son safe," she added quietly. The line went dead. I stared at the phone long after the screen went dark. Whoever she was, she knew I'd started looking. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw two versions of the same face. Michael standing in his Navy suit at our 30th anniversary dinner, and Dr. Reynolds beneath surgical lights, his expression steady and unreadable. By morning, exhaustion had settled into my bones, but something else had taken root alongside it. Clarity. When you lose someone suddenly, your memory becomes selective. You hold on to the soft edges, the laughter, the warmth, the last kiss, and you blur the rest because it hurts too much to look directly at it. But now, lying in that hospital bed with a fresh incision across my abdomen and a threat echoing in my ears, I forced myself to look. Michael's accident had happened on a Thursday. It was raining that night, the kind of cold, slanting rain that makes highways shine like glass. I had been home. We'd argued earlier that week about something small. I don't even remember what. A business trip he wanted to take alone. Space, he called it. Just a few days to think. At 2 a.m, a state trooper knocked on our door. Single vehicle accident. Loss of control. Instant. They never used the word dead at first. They circled around it. The car had gone off a curve near mile marker 23. There had been a fire, they said. Structural damage. The body had been identified through dental records. Closed casket. I remember the funeral home director speaking in soft tones, his hands folded carefully. "It's best not to open it," he'd said. The trauma was extensive. I had nodded. I was numb. Jacob was shaking so hard I thought he might collapse. Michael's younger sister, Emma Reynolds, handled everything. She had always been decisive, protective, sometimes to the point of being controlling. "I'll take care of it," she told me, placing a firm hand on my shoulder. "You focus on Jacob." And I had let her. That's what keeps replaying in my mind now. I had let her. Back in the present, the hospital discharged me mid-morning. Jacob insisted on driving me home. The air outside felt sharper than usual, like the world had edges I hadn't noticed before. In the car, he kept glancing at me as if expecting me to say something. "You didn't tell me about the call," he said finally. I turned my head slowly. "What call?" He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "The nurse mentioned you were agitated last night. Security reviewed hallway cameras because someone reported a disturbance near your room." I stared at him. "You knew?" He swallowed. "Mom, I didn't want to stress you." "Jacob." His voice cracked slightly. "I got a message too." The words hit harder than the surgery had. "What kind of message?" He hesitated for a long moment before answering. "A text from a blocked number." "What did it say?" He pulled into my driveway, but didn't turn off the engine. It said, "Let the dead stay buried." The house looked the same as always. Cream-colored siding, trimmed hedges. Michael used to fuss over. The wind chime he'd hung on the porch still clinking softly in the breeze. Nothing about it suggested deception. Jacob finally killed the engine and faced me. "I didn't tell you because I thought it was spam or a cruel prank. But after what you said about the surgeon—" "You think I imagined it?" I said quietly. He shook his head. "I don't know what to think." Inside the house, the air felt stale, like it had been holding its breath for years. I walked straight to the hallway closet where Michael had kept a small lockbox. I hadn't opened it in a long time. Jacob watched as I carried it to the kitchen table and lifted the lid. Inside were documents: our marriage certificate, insurance papers, copies of Michael's driver's license, his old college transcripts. the ones that still said Reynolds. At the bottom was the death certificate. I unfolded it slowly. Name, Michael James Harrison. Date of death, November 14th. Cause, blunt force trauma consistent with motor vehicle accident. Certifying physician, Dr. L. Patterson, not Reynolds. But something else caught my eye. The time of death was listed as 2017 a.m. I remembered the trooper saying the accident had been reported at 1040 a.m. How long does it take to confirm a death at the scene? I murmured. Jacob leaned closer. Why? If it was instant, why list a time nearly 40 minutes later? He frowned. Maybe protocol. Maybe, I said. Or maybe not. I flipped through the rest of the papers. Funeral invoice paid in full by Emma Reynolds. I'd forgotten that part. Emma insisted. Jacob said quietly, reading my thoughts. She said you shouldn't have to deal with finances on top of everything. I looked at him. When was the last time you spoke to Aunt Emma? He hesitated again. A few months ago. About? He bit his lip. About money. My stomach tightened. What kind of money? He exhaled slowly. After Dad died, a trust was set up for me. I stared at him. A trust? Yes. Aunt Emma managed it. And is it still active? The room seemed to tilt slightly. Active? How? Deposits, he said softly. Quarterly. From who? He met my eyes, and for the first time since I'd woken up, I saw fear in his. They're labeled anonymously. My heart thudded painfully against my stitches. How much? Enough? Silence stretched between us. Jacob, I said carefully, did you ever see your father's body? He closed his eyes. No. Did you ever question it? I was 28, Mom. I trusted you. I trusted Aunt Emma. I trusted the system. So had I. And now, piece by piece, that trust felt like paper dissolving in water. I stood slowly, ignoring the protest from my abdomen. I'm going to see Emma. Jacob stood too. Mom, you just had emergency surgery. I'm not going to fight her, I said. I just need to look her in the eye. Before I could reach the door, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time, I answered on speaker. Yes. A man's voice this time, calm, controlled. You should have left it alone, Catherine. My blood ran cold. Who is this? A pause. Then, you have no idea what he was running from. The line went dead. I looked at Jacob. Running, I repeated softly. From what? Or from who? I didn't go to Emma's house that afternoon. I drove there, but I never made it past the end of her street. Her neighborhood hadn't changed in 8 years. Same manicured lawns, same identical mailboxes, same carefully spaced flower beds. Emma had always liked order, control, precision. I pulled over 3 houses down from hers and shut off the engine. Jacob sat beside me, silent. You don't have to come, I said. I know, he replied, but if this is real, I don't want you doing it alone. I studied Emma's house from a distance. 8 years ago, she'd stood beside me at the funeral home, her arm around my shoulders, guiding every decision. She'd arranged the casket, the service, the burial. She'd even insisted on speaking first at the graveside. Michael deserved dignity, she'd said. Dignity, not truth. Mom, Jacob said quietly, there's something I didn't tell you. My eyes shifted to him. What? He stared straight ahead at his aunt's house, his voice tightening. 3 months after Dad died, I got a letter. My pulse quickened. What kind of letter? He swallowed. No return address. Just my name. And it had a cashier's check inside. For how much? $25,000. The number hit me like a second incision. And you didn't tell me? I didn't know what to do. I thought it was a mistake. But Aunt Emma called me the next day. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. What did she say? He said Dad had made arrangements before the accident, that he'd wanted me taken care of. She told me not to question it. And you didn't? She turned to me, eyes bright with frustration. I was grieving, Mom. I just lost my father. I didn't want to fight with the only adult who seemed to have answers. Answers? That had always been Emma's strength. She never wavered, never hesitated. She just positioned people gently until they stood exactly where she wanted them. What did the letter say? I asked. She hesitated. It said, trust what you were told. Don't dig. The same language. Let the dead stay buried. Stop looking for him. I stared at Emma's house again. This isn't random, I said. No. And the deposits into your trust? They started the same month as that check. My chest ached. Not from the surgery, from realization. He didn't die, I whispered. Jacob's breath hitched. You think he staged it? I don't know, I admitted. But someone is paying to keep us quiet. We sat there for another minute before I restarted the engine. We're not going in? Jacob asked. Not yet. I drove away slowly. If Emma was involved, walking in blind would only push her further into silence. Instead, I headed toward Mercy General again. Mom, I'm not confronting anyone, I said. I just want to see something. The hospital lobby buzzed with its usual quiet efficiency, wheelchairs rolling, volunteers offering directions, families clutching coffee cups like lifelines. I approached the front desk. I'm looking for Dr. Thomas Reynolds, I said carefully. The receptionist typed quickly. He's in surgery today. General Surgical Suite. Does he have office hours? He rotates between hospitals. Of course he did. Could you tell me when he'll be back here? I'm sorry, ma'am. We can't disclose physician schedules without authorization. Jacob tugged lightly at my sleeve. Mom, look. Across the lobby, mounted on the wall near the surgical wing, was a framed board listing attending surgeons. Dr. Thomas Reynolds, M.D., General Surgery. Below it was a smaller plaque, formerly affiliated St. Mary's Medical, Hartford. Hartford. Michael and I had lived in Connecticut for 4 years early in our marriage before Jacob was born. Let's go, I murmured. We stepped closer to the plaque. There was a professional headshot attached to his name, clear, unmasked. My breath left my body. It wasn't just resemblance under surgical lighting. It was him. Slightly older, hair graying at the temples, expression more guarded, but the same man I had kissed goodbye the morning of his accident. Jacob's hand tightened around mine. Oh my God, he whispered. The lobby seemed to fall away. He's alive, Jacob said faintly. I stared at the photo. Underneath his credentials was a short biography. Dr. Reynolds relocated to Oregon 8 years ago after completing advanced trauma certification. He is known for his discretion and commitment to patient care. 8 years. The exact year Michael died. My pulse pounded painfully in my ears. Then I noticed something else in the biography, a line that most people would ignore. Previously practiced under a different name due to legal circumstances. My stomach dropped. Legal circumstances. Before I could answer, my phone vibrated again. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. Catherine. Emma's voice, calm as ever. You shouldn't be at the hospital. Cold swept through me. How do you know where I am? I told you once, she said gently. Michael deserved dignity. Is he alive? I demanded. Silence. Is he alive, Emma? You don't understand what he was running from. From who? I shouted, ignoring the curious glances in the lobby. From you. The word hit, harder than any threat. That's a lie. Is it? Her voice remained maddeningly even. You think you knew everything about your husband, about the choices he had to make. Jacob stepped closer, listening. You buried a closed casket, Emma continued. You signed what they put in front of you. You wanted it over. You wanted your grief neat and organized. That's not true, isn't it? My hand shook. If you keep digging, Emma said softly, you won't just ruin his new life. You'll destroy your son's. The line went dead. I looked at Jacob. New life, he repeated. My gaze drifted back to the photo on the wall. Dr. Thomas Reynolds. Not Michael Harrison, not Michael Reynolds. Someone in between. Mom, Jacob whispered, if he's alive, why hasn't he come back? That question hurt more than anything else. I looked at the man in the frame, at the man who looked exactly like my husband. And for the first time since the operating room, I felt something heavier than shock. Betrayal. Betrayal has a strange way of arriving quietly. It doesn't explode. It settles. It seeps into your bones and waits. That night, after the hospital lobby confrontation and Emma's voice still echoing in my ears, Jacob and I sat at the kitchen table long after the sun had gone down. Neither of us turned on the overhead light. The house glowed dimly from a single lamp in the living room, shadows stretching across the hardwood floor like unanswered questions. He's alive, Jacob said again, as if repeating it would make it less surreal. I don't know that, I said automatically. Mom? I didn't correct him again because deep down I knew. The plaque, the timing, the relocation, the legal circumstances, the money. It wasn't coincidence anymore. It was design. I stood slowly, my abdomen aching with every movement, and walked back to the lockbox in the hallway closet. If Michael had planned something, there would be a trace. He had never been careless. Even when he felt overwhelmed, he left breadcrumbs, notes and margins, labeled files, contingency plans for everything from car maintenance to retirement accounts. I spread every document across the table. Marriage certificate, mortgage records, insurance policy. Then I found it. A folded legal envelope tucked between old tax returns. It was dated 2 weeks before the accident, addressed to Michael J. Harrison. Inside was a letter from a law firm I didn't recognize. Reynolds and Associates, attorneys at law. The coincidence made my hands tremble. The letter was brief. Mr. Harrison, as discussed, the protective trust has been executed. Assets have been transferred according to the contingency agreement. Please confirm receipt of the updated beneficiary designations. Protective trust. Contingency agreement. Beneficiary designations. Jacob leaned over my shoulder. This isn't about life insurance, he whispered. No. I flipped to the second page. There was a line near the bottom. In the event of irreversible relocation, all further correspondence will be directed under the name T. Reynolds. Irreversible relocation. I felt the room shift. He didn't die, Jacob said softly. He relocated. I stared at the signature. Michael's handwriting was unmistakable, angular, precise. But beneath his signature was another line. Witnessed by E. Reynolds. Emma. My pulse thudded heavily. She knew, Jacob said. She didn't just know, I replied quietly. She facilitated it. I reached for my phone. What are you doing? Jacob asked. I'm calling the law firm. The number on the letter still connected. A receptionist answered, her tone polite but guarded. Reynolds and Associates. My name is Catherine Harrison, I said carefully. I have a letter from your firm dated 8 years ago. I need to speak to someone about a protective trust. There was a pause as she typed. I'm sorry, ma'am. That file is sealed. Sealed by who? I'm not authorized to disclose that information. I'm his wife. According to our records, she said, voice flattening slightly, Mr. Harrison legally terminated spousal authority prior to relocation. My hand tightened around the phone. Relocation where? I cannot provide that. Jacob's eyes widened. I swallowed hard. Is he alive? Silence on the other end. Then, I'm not authorized to answer that question. The call ended politely. Too politely. I lowered the phone slowly. He terminated spousal authority, Jacob repeated. That means he legally separated himself from me before the accident. Jacob's voice trembled. But you didn't divorce? No. Then what does that mean? It means he planned to disappear. The words felt foreign in my mouth. Disappear from me. From us. From his life. I sat down heavily. Jacob moved closer. Mom, he said gently. What if it wasn't about you? Emma's voice echoed again. You don't understand what he was running from. Emma said he was running, I murmured. From you? Jacob added carefully. I flinched. I never hurt him. I know that, he said quickly. But what if it wasn't physical? What if it was something else? Debt? Legal trouble? Someone threatening him? My mind searched for cracks in the past. There had been tension in the months before the accident. Quiet arguments. Michael taking phone calls in another room. His sudden insistence on organizing financial paperwork. I had chalked it up to stress. But what if it had been preparation? My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't unknown. It was a message from a private email address. The subject line read, If you want the truth. Inside was a single sentence. Meet me alone tomorrow, 3 p.m., Riverside Park. And beneath it, T.R. Thomas Reynolds, or Michael, or whoever he had become. Jacob read over my shoulder. You can't go alone. I have to. He could be manipulating you. He could also be the only one who will tell me why. Jacob exhaled slowly. I'm coming with you. No. Her jaw tightened. He's my father too. I met his eyes. If he wanted you there, he would have said so. The truth of that settled heavily between us. Jacob looked away first. What if he doesn't want us back? He whispered. That question sliced deeper than any accusation Emma had thrown. I didn't answer because I didn't know. All I knew was that tomorrow at 3 o'clock, I would be standing across from the man who either died 8 years ago or chose to let me believe he had. And somehow I would have to decide whether I wanted the truth badly enough to survive it. Riverside Park had always been Michael's favorite place. He used to say the water made him feel calm, that watching something flow without hesitation reminded him that life didn't have to be forced. We had brought Jacob there as a child, to feed the ducks, to ride bikes along the paved trail, to sit on the old wooden bench near the river bend. That bench was where he told me he'd gotten the promotion. It was where we argued about moving across the country. And now, 8 years after I lowered his casket into the ground, it was where I waited to see if my grief had been built on a lie. I arrived at 2040 p.m., 15 minutes early. The sky was overcast, the air cool enough to sting my lungs with every breath. I wore a jacket even though I didn't feel cold. I felt exposed. I sat on the bench. The river moved calmly beside me, indifferent to human secrets. At exactly 3002 p.m., I heard footsteps on gravel behind me. I didn't turn immediately. I already knew. When I finally looked over my shoulder, he was standing there. No surgical mask, no hospital lighting, just a man in a dark jacket, hair graying at the temples, posture stiffer than Michael had ever carried himself. But it was his face, his eyes, the faint, irregular mark at his temple. Time did not fracture this time. It slowed into something heavy and unbearable. "Catherine," he said quietly, his voice slightly different than I remembered, but unmistakable. I stood slowly, every movement deliberate. "Michael." He flinched. "That's not my name anymore." I swallowed. "You can't expect me to call you anything else." Silence stretched between us. Up close, I could see subtle differences. A faint scar near his collarbone I didn't recognize, a hardness in his posture. But his eyes were the same clear winter blue I'd memorized for 32 years. "You look well," he said awkwardly. "You buried me?" His composure cracked for a second. "I know." "Did you?" Her eyes searched mine, then dropped to the ground. I didn't have a choice. Everyone says that when they do something unforgivable. He closed his eyes briefly, steadying himself. "I never wanted to hurt you or Jacob. But you did." His gaze dropped to the river. "I was being investigated." "For what?" "For something I didn't do." The wind picked up slightly, rustling leaves along the bank. "Explain," I said. He inhaled deeply. 8 years ago, I discovered financial irregularities in Emma's business accounts. My stomach tightened. "Your sister?" "Yes. She was moving money illegally. Offshore accounts, shell companies. And when I confronted her, she told me to forget I'd seen anything." My chest felt tight again, not from the surgery. "You threatened to expose her?" "Yes." "And she threatened you." The words landed heavily. She said if I went to authorities, I would be implicated, that the transactions could be traced through shared accounts. She said Jacob's future would be destroyed. She said you'd both lose everything, so you staged your death. I was advised to disappear. "By who?" "An attorney. A federal contact. You entered witness protection." His silence was answer enough. "But Emma's still walking around free." "They needed evidence," he said sharply. "Years of it." "And what about us?" I demanded. "We weren't evidence. We were your family." His eyes filled, but he didn't let the tears fall. "If I had told you, you would have tried to fix it." "Yes. And that would have put you directly in danger. You let me bury an empty box." His jaw trembled. "There wasn't a body." "I know." We stood there in the thick air of everything unsaid. "You could have told Jacob," I whispered. "He was being monitored." "And now?" "Emma doesn't know we've spoken, so you're still running." "I'm not running," he said, voice tightening. "I've been working, building a case. Every move she makes. From an operating room? From everywhere." The river kept moving. "And the money?" I asked. "The trust?" he replied quietly. "That was me." "You've been paying our son to stay silent. I've been protecting him." "By bribing him?" "By making sure Emma never had leverage." I stared at him. "You could have trusted me." "I did trust you," he said softly. "That's why I stayed away." The logic twisted in my mind. "Emma said you were running from me." His eyes flashed. "She would." Silence fell again. "Why now?" I asked. "Why show up as my surgeon?" "I didn't choose that," he said. "When your name appeared on my surgical list, I panicked. You could have reassigned me." "I tried." "And I couldn't risk another surgeon digging into your records." Cold realization crept in. "You're still protecting me?" "Yes." I shook my head slowly. This is insanity. Catherine. No, I interrupted. You don't get to call me that like nothing happened. His composure broke. Then a tear slipped down his cheek. I watched you from a distance, he whispered. I made sure you were safe. I tracked your medical updates through private channels. When your appendicitis condition became critical, I pulled strings to be assigned to this hospital. You've been watching us. Protecting you, I felt anger and something dangerously close to relief twist together inside me. You could have told me. I couldn't. And now? He cut himself off. Now, Emma's case is closing. What does that mean? It means soon I won't have to disappear anymore. A sharp sound cut through the air. A car door slamming in the parking lot behind us. His eyes flicked toward the noise. We don't have much time, he said urgently. For what? For you to decide. Decide what? Whether you want to know everything. He reached into his jacket pocket and handed me a small envelope. Inside is a DNA confirmation. My heart lurched. DNA. Emma tried to question my identity legally, he said quickly. To claim I wasn't Michael and seize certain assets, I had to prove I was. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside was a laboratory report. Name: Thomas Reynolds, formerly Michael James Harrison. Identity verification: 99.98% match to prior medical records and spousal DNA reference. Spousal DNA reference. You took a sample from me, I whispered, during surgery. The world narrowed. You used my operation to confirm my identity. I needed documentation. The report blurred in my vision. I had expected the DNA to reveal deception. Instead, it confirmed something worse. He had never stopped being Michael. He had simply chosen not to be my husband. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. 99.98%. Clinical language for something deeply human. Michael Thomas stood across from me at Riverside Park, his jacket shifting slightly in the wind, his eyes searching my face the way they used to when he tried to predict my reaction before I spoke. For 8 years, I had mourned a man who was not dead. Now I stood in front of a man who had not been mine for 8 years. Those are two very different kinds of loss. You used my surgery, I said slowly, to confirm you were still legally yourself. I had to secure the case, he replied quietly. Emma has been trying to undermine my testimony for years. She needed proof I wasn't an imposter, that I hadn't fabricated my identity. So you took my DNA without telling me. I used a spousal reference. It was the fastest way. The fastest way, I repeated. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Catherine, if Emma discredits me, everything collapses. The investigation, the protection, the truth. And you never once thought I deserved to know. His jaw tightened. Every day. Then why didn't you? Because if I told you, you would have tried to fix it. Yes, I said without hesitation. And that's exactly why I couldn't. The river moved beside us, steady and indifferent. I remembered sitting on the same bench years ago, Michael's hand wrapped around mine while he described a new surgical technique he'd been studying. He'd always loved solving problems. Apparently, he had solved this one by erasing himself. Does Jacob know everything? I asked. He knows enough. He deserves more than enough. His eyes softened. I know. Then tell him. I will when it's safe. When will that be? Soon. I laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. You've been saying that for 8 years. A long silence passed between us. Finally, I asked the question that had been waiting beneath everything else. Did you ever plan to come back? He didn't answer immediately. Yes, he said at last, but not as the man who left. What does that even mean? It means I had to become someone strong enough to finish what I started. And what did you start? Stopping her. His voice had steel in it now. For years, Emma has siphoned money from clients, exploited vulnerable investors, buried evidence. I gathered documentation before I disappeared, enough to open a federal inquiry. But I needed time. I needed distance. And you needed us to believe you were dead. His eyes filled again. I needed you safe. The anger inside me had burned hot at first. Now it burned slower, heavier. Did you love me? I asked quietly. His breath caught. I never stopped. That's not the same as staying. I know. A car engine started in the parking lot. He glanced over his shoulder briefly. They're watching, he said. Who? Emma still has people loyal to her. If she suspects we're working together? We're not working together, I interrupted. You made that decision alone. His shoulders sagged slightly. You're right. I looked down at the DNA report again. Proof of identity. Proof that the man in front of me was the same one I had married. And proof that he had chosen a different life. You protected us, I said slowly, but you didn't trust us. He nodded once, painfully. That's fair. The honesty caught me off guard. I don't know how to forgive this, I admitted. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? That you don't let Emma win. I looked up sharply. She's closer to indictment than she's ever been, he continued. If you pull back now, if you create public conflict, she'll use it to discredit everything. She'll say, I'm unstable, that I fabricated threats, and what do you want from me? Nothing official, he said. Just patience. I almost smiled at that. Patience, I repeated. You buried me in grief for 8 years, and now you want patience. He stepped closer, lowering his voice even more. I want a chance to fix what I broke. The river kept moving. I realized something then. Something I hadn't allowed myself to think about since the operating room. I wasn't just angry. I was relieved. Relieved he hadn't burned in a car. Relieved he hadn't suffered alone. Relieved that the last memory I had of him wasn't truly the end. Relief is dangerous. It softens edges you think you need. I can't promise forgiveness, I said finally. I know. I can't promise trust, I know. But I can promise this. He looked up. I won't protect Emma. A flicker of gratitude crossed his face. And I won't pretend you're dead anymore. Tears slipped down his cheeks, then unrestrained. I don't expect you to come back, I continued. Not as my husband. That part of us? It's different now. He nodded slowly. But Jacob deserves his father, I said. In whatever form that looks like. I want that, he whispered. Then start there. A breeze moved through the trees, scattering leaves across the path. For a moment, we stood in silence, not as husband and wife, not as strangers, but as two people who had survived something neither of us had understood at the time. I have to go, he said softly. I know. He hesitated, then reached out and briefly touched my hand. His touch was familiar, too familiar. Then he stepped back. I'll contact you when it's done, he said. When Emma is finished. And then we see what's left. He turned and walked toward the parking lot. I didn't call after him. I watched until he disappeared from view. The bench creaked as I sat back down. 8 years ago, I thought I had lost my husband. Today, I learned I had lost something more complicated than that. But I also gained something unexpected. The truth. It isn't clean. It isn't painless. But it's real. If you've ever uncovered a truth that changed everything you believed, I want to know what that felt like for you. Leave a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. We share stories like this every day. Stories about loss, resilience, and the complicated ways love survives. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Let's keep walking this journey together.